Welcome from myself, Gail Bromley, and BGCI, the organisation. I hope you're enjoying a productive day in Bergamo today, and we'll have a lot to discuss and debate on the subject of food security. Today I'm going to introduce you to our BigPicnic project, in which the Bergamo City and the Bergamo Botanic Garden are our Italian partners. And the first slide that I'm going to show you is what is BigPicnic? So what is this as a project? Well, it's a 3-year EU-funded project funded through the Horizon 2020 programme called Science in Society. And we have 19 partners from 13 countries, of which Bergamo in Italy, of course, is one. One partner is from outside the EU. We have a partner, Turu Botanic Gardens from Uganda, and we brought Uganda into the project so that they could counterbalance the European food security issues with those of a country in development, and also to offer new perspectives and approaches to the project. The next slide shows us our aims and objectives. So what is our overall aim? Well, our overall aim is to make Botanic Gardens the centre of debate and dialogue, giving the public a voice about what should be the local, the regional, the national and the EU-wide priorities and actions for food security. We have 6 key objectives, more or less on the screen here. One is to improve the understanding and realisation of RI. RRI, that stands for Responsible Research and Innovation, through the provision of best practice case studies. We want to increase our engagement with local and global food security issues through outreach exhibitions and science cafes amongst our diverse audiences. We're going to co-create with our diverse audiences accessible and novel mechanisms to facilitate interaction and bridge the gap between the public, policymakers and researchers. And we feel that's important to bring these very different audiences together. There have also been other projects in Europe that we want to build on, which are particularly relevant to our project. We worked originally on a project called Inquire, which looks at inquiry-based science education that we want to integrate into our project, and also the Places and Voices project, again, looking at public opinion, and we want to build on their strengths and enhance the recommendations that they already have had. We want to build the capacity of Botanic Gardens across Europe to develop and deliver co-creation approaches with their local and regional audiences. And we want to develop public gardens, Botanic Gardens as centres that promote dialogue between the public and researchers and policy. But there are many issues, of course, in food security. This is particularly relevant to Italy. This is a farmer working in southern Italy where a bacterium is devastating olive trees. And this was a very current issue. It was reported in Nature News in May this particular year. So this is indeed very current. The following slide also shows how something like this can actually impact quite significantly in other areas. So in the top right-hand corner, you can see where the issue around the bacterium was, and there was an area of containment for 2015, and of course that border has now moved in 2016 because bacteria, unfortunately, don't really respect borders. So there is a worry across the whole of Europe, particularly in areas where olives are grown, which is Greece, Turkey, Spain, Syria, Egypt, where the spread of this particular bacteria may cause a major economic crisis. So something that affects one country may also, of course, necessarily have a knock-on effect in other countries, and we need to feel that we can deal with those issues and look at what recommendations we need for taking action against such catastrophes. The next slide then shows us, what do we mean by food security? Well, there is a very nice definition that was produced by the World Food Summit in 1996, which says, when all people at all times have physical and economic access to sufficient, safe and nutritious food that meets their dietary needs and their food preferences for an active and healthy life. That's an overarching statement, but of course we recognise that in each partner country there may be aspects of food security that are different. What's key in Poland may be different from that that's in Italy or that that's in the UK. And these many facets can be very different. So it may be that we need to ensure that we have enough food growing to feed us all, or perhaps that everybody has access to food. And having access to food isn't just the same thing as having food for everybody, because it does mean, of course, that you can grow a lot of food, but not everybody necessarily, it's not as well distributed as it may be, and therefore we need to think about access to food for everybody. We need to think about quality and nutritional value. We need to work to stop food wastage. For England, for example, in the UK, currently, I think the current value is that we throw away around a third of everything that we buy in fresh produce, which is quite ridiculous in a world of diminishing resources. We also need to secure our wild crops, and that's something very important for botanic gardens. We need our wild crops as botanical arks so that they are available for use in the future. And we also need to think about that we're maintaining diversity in food crops and plants. So our wild crop relatives are very important to be able to breed back perhaps disease resistance or better quality into foods should we have any disaster with any of our crops. So hopefully our botanic gardens are wonderful repositories of knowledge about this. And for each of our consortium partners, we do recognise that they will perhaps be looking to emphasise particular aspects. So why botanic gardens? And botanic gardens are particularly interesting, of course. They have a long history of plant research on crops and wild relatives. They are wonderfully accessible repositories for large amounts of information about plants and their uses, and their values, their qualities. Many botanic gardens are associated with universities, so they can call on further research infrastructures to help develop ideas and research aspects of working with food security. Botanic gardens are also wonderful because they are in urban areas, in towns, in cities, and they are easily accessible to the public. So they can become those wonderful hubs for the public that we would want them to become in terms of debate. And we can facilitate that dialogue and that debate for a number of audiences. And of course, as our slide shows, we are already working to support many aspects of food security. Lots of botanic gardens around the world are working to explain food security to people, or actually physically developing research and access to food security issues. So who are our audiences? And we do have a large number of audiences, as you can see on the next slide. We have children, we have families, we have people with impairments, we have older people. But not only do we have our normal audiences, we are also hoping in this project to engage new target audiences, perhaps those people who wouldn't necessarily go to a botanic garden, people for whom a botanic garden is just not on their radar. They don't know what it's for or have any particular understanding. And we would like to perhaps target people like refugees or different ethnic communities within our cities, and really work with them to develop new thoughts and approaches and perhaps observations about food security. One of the audiences that you see on the screen is teenagers. They are notoriously hard to attract, but if we could get teenagers involved, tweeting about food security, that would be an amazing thing to do, and hopefully they could really kind of engage the rest of their group in ideas and thoughts about food security. So we need to bring them all together to discuss these options with our stakeholders, who are the farmers, the food retailers, local government agencies, and policymakers in particular. So how are we going to do this? Well, we're going to use co-creation, or we are in fact already using co-creation. The next slide has a definition of co-creation on it. But in a sense, co-creation is around giving equal status, if you like. It creates conditions of equality amongst our different stakeholders. So we're not just asking their opinion, but we're actively listening, treating them as equals, having those debates and discussions where we can negotiate with one another what are the right aspects that we should be working with. So those people become very much involved in the creative process of developing everything from our public exhibitions to working with us in the science cafes, and obviously to sharing their concerns and their thoughts and their opinions with us, that we can take forward as their voice publicly to our policymakers. So through the Big Picnic, how many people are we hoping to engage? Well, we have quite an ambitious project here. We are looking to engage through various media. We will have around 90 science cafes across our 13 countries. And through those, we hope to reach a total of 8,000 participants with face-to-face interactions. Then we're looking at reaching around 90,000 people through what we call take-home activities. And these will be activities that we will develop for families and individuals that will be online. And once people have been engaged with us, they can go home, look on their computer, do some puzzles, do some quizzes, do some activities and some fun actions. And those will be the take-home activities that we hope will continue that engagement process and get them to involve other people, their families, their children, their relations. And then we hope to engage around 200,000 through social media. If we can get those teenagers involved, we'll certainly get that number because they tweet all the time. So we'll be tweeting away through the key issues of food security and really putting important messages out there for the public. And of course, we have collectively across our 13 Botanic Garden partners around 3 million people who visit the garden anyway, which is a fantastic opportunity to really kind of involve our audiences in discussing and debating and even just becoming aware of the issues of food security. And that's something that I think Botanic Gardens can do very well indeed. Now, one of the things that we have to do is to explore RRI, that research and responsible innovation that I was talking about earlier. And on the next slide, you can see really a definition of RRI, which is it's a transparent process where society and innovators become mutually responsive to one another to look at how marketable products or innovation processes and research can take things forward. So it's working together to develop key priorities, if you like, for researchers, using opinion from the public as well, that shared opinion. So it's not just the researchers thinking, we'll do this today. It's the public saying, well, that's well and good, but we think this is more important, and should we have a discussion about what we should really be researching and innovating on? So that's responsible research and innovation. And we will be doing that in two ways. One, we will be collecting case studies about how we engage our publics and our audiences in this debate and dialogue. What works well, what doesn't work well, what's great practice in engaging all these new people. And those case studies will be put up into an RRI toolkit that's already available for the European Commission. So we can give more case studies, more best practice for other projects and researchers to really work with the public to get those ideas. And the other way that we're affecting RRI is that all of that debate and dialogue with our different audiences about what are the key priorities in food security, what do we think the government should be emphasising, what action should we be taking, all of that dialogue will be collated and given to a consolidation group made up of food security experts that we've brought together, and they will analyse that data and put together recommendations in a paper that will go to the European Commission and also to the key stakeholders, so big businesses, research universities. It'll go to local authorities and regional authorities in partner countries. So hopefully we can influence the policymakers with the voice of the public about where we should be moving for the future. And I think that is key to how we move forward in the future. So how are we working? And I have a slide here which shows you roughly how we are working in our particular organisation. One of the key things is that we're working in what's called a community of practice. And the community of practice is about sharing all our ideas and our thoughts and our processes of how we're working to get this dialogue going with all of our partners as well. So what Bergamo does, the information from that will be perhaps useful to people in Edinburgh, in the UK. People in Poland might have wonderful ideas that can be adopted by those in Bulgaria. So we will be working to share all those practices that we've been developing and rolling those out across all of the gardens so that people can work more efficiently and effectively and hopefully have a better outcome at the end of it. And we'll be using tools like our outreach exhibitions that we're developing and our science cafes to capture that information from all of our audiences. And our audiences, as I've said, are many, including the wonderful lawyers who I know are part of this workshop today and who have such a huge influence on how we can look at food security issues in the future. So hopefully you will be one of those key audiences feeding into our work over the next couple of years. And our last slide here really shows what our values are. As an organisation, a consortium, right at the very beginning of our project, we looked at what were our key values to take forward in the project and obviously within each partner. And they included things like ethical responsibility, that inclusion, giving that voice to everybody, respect, openness, positivity, both biodiversity and cultural diversity, societal use, making sure that we are really thinking about that, learning from each other, which is that community of practice I've just described, and taking this forward sustainably. This isn't just a project that we want to be finished at the end of 3 years. It is a long-term process, and we want to be centres for dialogue, not just about food security, but other issues around plants and the environment, but also perhaps continuing that story of food security and making sure that we're still having an input in many years to come. So, interestingly, I think BGCI, the organisation I'm working with at the moment, really kind of sums up, if you like, what we're working within the BigPicnic, which is about connecting people, sharing knowledge and saving plants. BGCI is an umbrella organisation that works with all the botanic gardens around the world to really engage our botanic gardens in securing plant diversity and using that for the well-being of people and the planet. So in a sense, it echoes the ideals of our BigPicnic project. And I hope that this presentation has certainly given you some idea of the complexity of the BigPicnic project. It has been wonderful working with Bergamo during this year, and through our joint efforts, we hope to have many more interesting and productive meetings. We hope that the data collection from the Italian public, and some of you here today, hopefully, will produce some key recommendations about how we address food security going forward. So it only remains for me to say, I hope you enjoy the rest of the workshop. And I'm sure we'll be hearing about some brilliant discussions arising from today when we next meet the Bergamo team. So thank you very much.